Thank you for the comment. I want to answer this, and sorry about my voice. I have a head cold. So when you are making your panel and you're ready to cast off, we remove the yarn from the machine. If we first crank to the other side with no yarn in the machine and then try to cast off on this side, you definitely can, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's super easy when you start to crank backwards for those needles to come back up, and it just pops off of the machine. And that works great for the waste yarn cast off, but if you're just wanting to cast off with your needle, let me show you the way I do it, where I find more success and I get less dropped stitches. So once you take the yarn out of the yarn holder, we want to make sure it's long enough to be able to cast off. Also at this point, once the yarn is out of the machine, you do not want to crank at all. Just leave it as is until you're ready to cast off. So now I have zoomed in, and only now am I going to start to crank forward, and I'm going to let the needle drop. And now I'm going to pick up that stitch, and I'm doing it on the right side of my yarn holder instead of my left side. Once that goes down, now I'm going to pick up the stitch, and then I'm going to do this for every single needle. So doing it this way just gives you a little bit extra security, I have found, for me, because I have not cranked all the way around one time. If the needles can't come up and pop off that loop off of the machine, the needles are just going to come down and leave it on those two little pegs, and then I can pick it up. Now you do have to watch if multiple needles go down. If you pull too hard, you could pull it also off of the pegs. That could be the other problem, is that your multiple needles are going down and the loops are getting popped off of those two small little pegs. Now I'm replaying the same video again because I want to show you what's happening on the other side of the machine, on why the loops become unsecure once we take the yarn out of the yarn holder. And it's how the machine works to make the knit stitches. So once I zoom in here, now look at the left side of my yarn holder. There's no yarn in the yarn holder, right? And I'm going to pick up the stitch on the right side of my machine. But if we look over to the far left side, you'll see the needles come up. The loop actually comes up and over. And then as I continue to crank forward, the needle is going to continue to come up. We just wait a second. I'm cranking forward, the needle comes up, and there's a new loop tucked underneath that when I crank forward again, it's going to come down onto those two small pegs. So once that loop comes up and there's no more yarn that got caught under the needle, now the only thing left is that loop that's on the two pegs. And now it's completely down, and that's why it's easy to take it off of your machine. So that's also another reason why, if you take the yarn out of your yarn holder, if you crank it all the way around to the other side without any yarn, there's no extra loop underneath the hooks or the needles. And the only thing holding them on is the two little pegs. So I'm just removing that second step and making it so once I pick up a needle like I just done here, still all these rest of these needles on the other side of the yarn holder, they're more secure because there's a loop on the two little pegs, and there's also some yarn tucked underneath the needle that it's still hooked on. Hopefully that makes sense. And I'm going to put in the video description the link to my beginner project, and it's to the first video on my playlist, Sentro Knitting Machine 101. And I walk through step by step on how to set up and use your machine, and a lot of people have found that helpful. And there's multiple videos in that playlist going from a super easy project and then to more advanced projects. But if you have any other questions, please let me know in the comments. I appreciate all the likes and follows, and happy crafting, everybody.